Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2020 Virtual Veterinary School graduation. I am your host for this evening. My name is Dr. Andy Rourke. I am a veterinarian in Greenville, South Carolina, and welcome to what is going to be a wonderful celebration of the 2020 Veterinary School graduates from across the world. We are here tonight to celebrate these students, to marvel at their accomplishment, and to congratulate them on what they have achieved. We are also here to celebrate their family members, their parents who encouraged them from the time they were children in many cases, their spouses who ate dinner alone while they were at the clinics, and their children who missed their mommy or daddy while these students worked to achieve their professional dreams. So many of you have sacrificed so much, and you should all be celebrated tonight. And so that's the first thing that I want to say is please celebrate those that you supported and who supported you as they came to this point, to the graduation, to their transition into life as doctors. Do it in the comments. Let's talk about who you're proud of and why you're proud of them. Celebrate your favorite memories and share them with all of us. We want to see you patting each other on the back and giving heartfelt congratulations to those who got you here and to those that you are thrilled to see arrive. So please celebrate each other. This is an opportunity for us to give last-second advice to the graduates as they enter their professional lives. I would like to see veterinarians from across the world share your best piece of advice for these graduating students. What do you wish you had known as you entered our profession? This is the chance to share that. So do that in the comments. If you're not in the veterinary profession, share your best piece of life advice. What do you wish that you knew as you started your professional career? Guys, let's give warm, positive advice to those people who might find a pearl of wisdom that will help them. Let's come together to welcome these students into the best profession in the world. Veterinarians everywhere, say welcome aboard to our new colleagues. We are glad that they are here. And lastly, I am so thrilled because tonight is our opportunity to come together in fellowship as a global community to say congratulations. And so with that, let's go ahead and get started. We have a wonderful collection of commencement speakers tonight, and it's time for me to introduce the first. Dr. Carolyn Henry is the Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Missouri. Please join me in welcoming her.
I'm so honored to be a part of this celebration of the veterinary classes of 2020. I struggled with what message I wanted to share with you, and I decided to offer you some words of wisdom that have served me well in my personal and professional life. I have a saying whenever I'm about to embark on a new adventure, whether it's a trip someplace new or a new event. I start the journey by saying, I'll either have a good time or a good story. And if I do it right, I'll have both. I'm guessing that much of what we've experienced in the last few months with this new adventure created by COVID-19 would not fit into the category of a good time for most of us. But boy, do we have a good story. And for all the members of the veterinary classes of 2020, your story is just beginning, commencing, if you will. Just as we can all find the good and the bad in this pandemic experience, you've already experienced the good and the bad in your vet school training. Some of you may have doubted that you'd get to this point, but look at you. You've made it to your virtual graduation celebration, and you didn't even know that was a thing. And while this isn't what you thought was going to happen, there are some real benefits. You don't have to sit in a hot graduation gown waiting for what seems like hours to get your chance to walk across the stage. You don't have to worry about what relative will yell something cringeworthy or jangle a cowbell as your name is announced. And you will have a commencement story that is unlike any other graduating classes before. Now, I know many of you are worried about your training and how it changed in the past few months. And you may be asking yourself if you're really ready for this. You may ask, did I learn all that I need to know to start my new job? Well, let me answer that with an emphatic no, of course not. None of us learn everything we need to know in school. But you have the advantage of having learned some good lessons in things like patience, creativity, and most important, adaptability. I guarantee that will take you farther as a veterinarian than any lecture in vet school or case that you saw on clinical rotations. And because at commencement celebrations you're supposed to quote someone wiser than you, I'll quote the great mathematician and World War II codebreaker, Peter Hilton, who said, "Adaptability is itself a hallmark of successful education." Well, consider yourself successfully educated. You have adapted to new schedules, new ways to learn, how to prioritize between binge watching Netflix and watching a professor's first ever attempt at online teaching, and you've done it with humor and empathy and a sense of community. You've stifled your "okay boomer" comments while those of us entrusted to educate you have fumbled with technology and considered ourselves masterful if we used a Zoom background to show how altogether tech savvy yet relatable we really are. And while you've watched us struggle, I hope you've taken to heart the fact that we are imperfect and still learning every day. Embrace that, because you are about to become one of us, just younger and less cynical. But seriously, you're about to give up the safety net of clinicians who are more than happy to tell you when you're about to screw up, for the glorious freedom of being the content expert for your clients. Your words will have power. Your clients will look to you for hope and definitive answers. Kids will look up to you like you did the veterinarians you knew growing up. People on airplanes will seek your vast knowledge and opinions about the latest affliction of their pet, complete with the countless pictures on their phone that demonstrate just how unique their fur baby is. There will be an expectation that because you are now called a doctor, you have the knowledge to solve a vast array of medical dilemmas. But don't get too full of yourself. You're not a real doctor. Real doctors treat one species or one specific part of one species. You get the rest of the 8.7 million species. I don't care if you consider yourself an equine vet. If you're at a social event and introduce yourself as a veterinarian, you'd better be prepared to discuss my mother's cockatiel and why the cat at the nursing home can tell when someone is about to die. I say this not to scare you, but to demonstrate the great trust and admiration with which we are regarded by the public as a profession. We may not be real doctors, but we're the ones you'd want with you if you were stuck on a deserted island. For the parents listening to this, your son or daughter is the MacGyver of the medical world. For you graduates more familiar with the reference from the more recent Matt Damon movie, The Martian, you are highly regarded because you will know how to science the out of problems. And that's because we are a resourceful and resilient profession. We're known for our ability to roll with the punches, come up with creative solutions, and adapt to our circumstances and environments on a daily basis. How cool is that? And on the days when you're feeling like an imposter who has no right to be called a doctor or entrusted in life or death decisions, just remember this: you have weathered an unprecedented storm. You flipped from in-person to online classes virtually overnight and faced an uncertain future with the same grit and determination that got you to your senior year in vet school. You jumped headfirst into the unknown and found your way to a graduation celebration anyway. You won't have all the answers tomorrow, in 10 years, or in 30 years. And that's the cool part about veterinary medicine. You'll grow every single day. Be okay with the fact that you don't know it all, but make notes of what you need to learn and devote time to that when you get a break. Now, I've given several talks on imposter syndrome in my career because I really consider myself a poster child for the disease. I've lived my life convinced that at some point I will be revealed for the fraud that I am, and everyone will know that I don't have all the answers, that I got where I am today through blind luck and poor judgment on the part of others. But I know I'm not the only one here today who shares this affliction, so I'll offer you up a story to demonstrate how to face it one day at a time. I was the first oncology resident at Auburn University because I showed up on campus, asked if they would consider starting a program, and offered to work for free. Yeah, my acumen in negotiations was not my strong suit back then. After much consternation, most of the faculty decided that I was good enough for free help, even offered to pay me $1 a month so I would be eligible for a parking pass on campus, which, by the way, equated to 89 cents per month after taxes. Because there was no oncology service back then, I did most of my training with oncologists and internists on the internal medicine rotation, and I took consults on a wide variety of non-oncology cases. So despite having a good year and a half of practice experience under my belt, I was often faced with internal medicine questions that exceeded what I had learned just long enough to pass national boards. One day I got a call from a gentleman who said his dog had been diagnosed with dropsy, and he wanted to know if we could do anything to help. Okay, so I had absolutely no idea what dropsy was. I later learned, without the benefit of Google, which didn't exist back then, that dropsy is an old-fashioned or less technical term for edema. But in the spirit of adaptability that defines our profession, I pondered for a moment before asking, "Sir, does your dog have type 1 or type 2 dropsy?" Spoiler alert, those categories don't even exist. But I asked it with confidence, and I made a note to myself to look up the word dropsy as soon as I got the chance. The pet owner, naturally impressed with my vast knowledge of the disease, admitted that he didn't know if it was type 1 or type 2. I suggested that we start with diagnostics to determine the category of dropsy, and I transferred the call to the front desk for scheduling. Is there a moral to that story? Yeah, probably not. And I don't really recommend the fake it till you make it mantra. You need to be more prepared than that. But when you are all well trained, which you are, and you are practicing with work ethic and integrity, which you will, cut yourself some slack and embrace the opportunity that this profession gives you to learn something new every day. There are thousands of you gathered here today to celebrate the newest graduates to enter this awesome profession of veterinary medicine. And you in particular have already demonstrated mastery of one of the most important skills for your success in your career, adaptability. You've got this, class of 2020. Thank you for letting me be a part of your celebration, and as you start your new journey, I hope you have a good time and you have a lifetime of good stories. Congratulations.
And now, please welcome our veterinary student speakers. Marie Bucko is a rising fourth-year student at the University of Wisconsin's College of Veterinary Medicine, and she is the president of the Student American Veterinary Medical Association. And Sarah Montoya is a rising fourth-year student at NC State's College of Veterinary Medicine, and she is the National Veterinary Business Management Association president.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Montoya, and I am the VBMA National President.
And I'm Marie Bucko, your Student American Veterinary Medical Association President. Congratulations! You made it! Can you remember just 4 years ago, you submitted your vet school application, probably with relief, anxiousness, joy, and excitement? These same feelings are probably very well what you're feeling right now.
We're so excited to be here with you to celebrate the closing of one chapter and the start of another. Chances are, this isn't how you pictured your vet school graduation. You've dreamed of walking across the stage, turning your tassel, and celebrating with lifelong friends and colleagues. Instead, you're celebrating at home. But for the first time in history, we actually get to celebrate with vet students from across the world. All of our lives have been shaken over the past few months in different ways, but by being here today, we get to celebrate the class of 2020 together and the journey everyone has shared over the past 4 years. There were probably times along the way when you wanted to quit. What were the things that helped you through that time? Was it taking a hot shower, going for a walk, drinking a glass of wine and watching mindless TV, or eating a meal with friends and family? Whatever it was, what counts most is that you took that time for yourself. Vet school is hard, and the rest of your career will be filled with many of the same stresses. But through this, you've learned, and you're still learning, how to prioritize your own health and well-being in a way that's productive. The same skills you've built, the people around you to take care of yourself through vet school, will equip you for the rest of your life.
Although the days were long and the years were short, I want you to think about what pushed you to your limits. Was it your first spay or neuter surgery? Was it your first exam? Or maybe just the sheer volume of material to learn in that short amount of time? It was like drinking from a fire hose at times, or maybe all of the time. But the key theme in all of those experiences you've endured was just that. You prevailed. This characteristic about you is what will carry you into this next season of your life. Whether that's an internship, practicing, teaching, policy making, research, or anything else, you will be your own best advocate.
You might not get to have the same feeling walking across the stage at graduation as the veterinarians that came before you. However, there are so many experiences that you can share with the class of 2020 from across the world that are just as worthwhile to take a moment and remember. How about when you finally got that long-awaited acceptance letter to vet school? It didn't matter what else happened, you knew you were going to be a vet. How about when you stepped onto campus for orientation on the first day and met the people that you were going to be spending the next 4 years with? I bet you had no idea what they would mean to you now. Your first anatomy exam, your first surgery, your first day of clinics. Remember how those days felt. Those are the shared experiences that brought you here, and those are the days that made you a veterinarian.
Oprah once said, no matter what challenges or setbacks or disappointments you may have had or will encounter along the way, you will find true success and happiness if you have only one goal. And there really is only one goal, and that is to fulfill the highest, most truthful expression of yourself, unapologetically. You will be your own best advocate. Don't be trapped by the dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. And don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. You put in the thousands of hours. You passed those exams. You did the studying. And you did the stretching, the adaptivity, and the growth. Some of the greatest advice I received that I want to share with you is just this. Align your personality with your purpose, and nobody can touch you. Congratulations, class of 2020. We can't wait to see you as veterinarians.
And now I'd like to introduce one of our 2020 veterinary school graduates, Trustin Moore. Dr. Trustin Moore is a graduate of Western University's College of Veterinary Medicine. He is an internet personality that many of you know. He is amazingly talented. He is a funny, musically gifted individual that makes me smile all the time. And he is a real gift to our profession. I think we'll be laughing with him for years and years to come. Trustin Moore.
My GPA is always lower compared to my classmates. I dream about going up there, but that is a big mistake. I look at the students around me, and I try to study more. So many notes around me, I can't study no more. But C's get degrees, C's get degrees. Darling, it's better, lower the stressors, take it from me. On the clinic floor we work all day, and at night we slave away, while we're devoting full time to floating. C's get degrees. On here all our posts look happy, if you really only knew that students aren't often happy. We're sad cause we're on the go, but we are truly lucky. We could have a worse fate. One day when we pass the NAVLE, we'll finally graduate on Zoom, but we're gonna do it. Cause C's get degrees, C's get degrees. Nobody questions on consultation, take it from me. We have read all of the books, clinics are done, I'm off the hook. We've got no troubles, life is a bubble. C's get degrees, oh C's get degrees. I know how to localize, don't give me that side eye, I used M&V. Even the surgeon had things to say, we put too much stress on our grades. You've got the spirit, so go ahead and kill it. Cause C's got us this degree. Congrats, guys.
Dr. Sarah Boston is a veterinary surgical oncologist who practices with VCA Canada in Toronto. Up until recently, she spent most of her career in academia as a tenured faculty member at both the University of Guelph and the University of Florida. Dr. Boston is also a best-selling author of the book Lucky Dog, How Being a Veterinarian Saved My Life, and she's one of the creators of the Cage Line, the hilarious social media and online platform for veterinarians. She's recently started doing stand-up comedy because she believes that we all need to laugh more. Dr. Sarah Boston.
I'll always remember the day I graduated from vet school as the first time that I got drunk with my father. It was also the last time that I got drunk with my father. It was 1992 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And at that time, a vegetarian meal in Saskatchewan was basically a regular meal with a large space on the plate where the meat used to live. I chose to fill that space with a cheap Chardonnay. And I was so excited that I was finally a veterinarian, and so was my dad. And so when the Bob Marley started playing, I dragged my father, my older British father, onto the dance floor with me, and we started busting out these crazy dancehall moves. I have never spoken to anyone about that night until right now. Your graduation's going to be a bit different this year. I mean, this is kind of weird, right? And I know this is not what you imagined when you dreamt about your vet school graduation. I mean, it's memorable, I guess. But in these crazy, uncertain times, I'm so happy to be here with you to celebrate your graduation. I've learned a lot about veterinary medicine in the past 24 years, but I'm going to focus on the past 6 weeks. Most veterinarians have had to lock their doors to the public. Consultations are done by telemedicine or over the phone, and the pet is brought into the hospital alone. And it's awkward and stressful and unconventional and awesome. Even with all of the chaos of a global pandemic, I had this funny feeling when we started locking the clients out. At first I couldn't put my finger on it, but then I realized what it was. I was happy. It's so peaceful. I love it. And maybe it's wrong, but locking the doors has helped me to define my role as a veterinarian. I like most of my clients fine, but I'm not here to care for them. I'm here to care for animals. You see, clients are like the icing, but animals are the cake. And sometimes it's a delicious icing that makes the cake taste more sweet and look more beautiful. But sometimes it's that gross icing that's piled on too high and it's not worth the calories. So you just scrape that off into the garbage before you eat the cake. Either way, the icing is not what I need. I just need the cake. Sometimes I want to say to those cheap icing clients, I'm not your counselor. I'm not your friend. I'm not your decision maker or your financial planner or your punching bag. Yes, I said punching bag. Why do I find locking the door so delightful? I think it's because for once, we are being forced to create boundaries. It's not the boundaries that we want, but it might be the boundaries that we need. For most veterinarians, creating boundaries is the hardest thing for us to learn. Some of us never learn. I'm just learning how to do it now. The COVID boundaries are not up for discussion. And now you are going to have to enforce these boundaries. And that is beautiful. There's no debating how these appointments are going to go. These are the rules, and you are in control. You should always be the one in control. At some point, I know things will go back to normal, and we're going to have to unlock our hospital doors again. I mean, we can't just leave these clients out in the parking lot forever, can we? No, really, can we? I challenge you to use this time to learn about creating boundaries and how to be in control. Hopefully soon we won't have to protect ourselves from the coronavirus, but you do need to protect yourself from other syndromes like burnout and compassion fatigue. You may have to protect yourself from yourself. When you get home from work, lock the clients and the work stress out and focus on your family and yourself and your time away from work. Please tattoo this on your arm. Telemedicine has been around for a while now, but the global pandemic has pushed us to use this technology in a big way. Veterinarians have had to pivot. Veterinarians who don't embrace these innovations will get left behind. Our veterinary associations have had to relax the rules so we can help animals remotely. And I love telemedicine almost as much as I love locking the doors. You should be paid for your time and expertise, and telemedicine makes this so much more clear. With telemedicine, you're getting paid for what you know, not necessarily what you do. It's fantastic. You spent years gaining the knowledge and expertise that you have today. Don't give it away for free. And when that guy you went to high school with messages you for some free urgent veterinary advice, you can send him a link to book one of your telemedicine appointments. Sweet. Things have changed so much since I graduated, and that's only going to accelerate over your career. Always be ready to pivot. Veterinarians are uniquely situated to pivot. You have all of the tools as a clinician, a scientist, an expert in zoonotic disease and public health. Be ready to pivot and follow the needs of society. But even if there isn't a global pandemic, follow your needs. You want to change? Awesome. Do it. Pivot. There are so many opportunities for you. Pivot towards your interests. Pivot towards your skills. Pivot towards happiness, because you can do anything you want with your veterinary degree. I want to ask you a question. Are you essential? Are veterinarians essential? I wasn't sure up until a few weeks ago. I knew that caring for the health and welfare of animals was important, but I didn't know if I was essential. I'm here in Ontario where I practice, and it was touch and go there for a while as we waited for the announcement from our government on whether or not veterinarians would be deemed essential. I knew the food animal vets and epidemiologists would probably be okay, but what about the rest of us? So we did make the list of essential workers, right below the liquor store. And we breathed a collective sigh of relief that we could still care for our patients. My colleagues and I were actually scared we might get shut down. Animals would not receive the urgent medical care they needed, but people would still go to the beer store because priorities. Veterinary medicine, I think you have some self-esteem issues. As veterinarians, we live in an alternate healthcare universe where we are told constantly, you're not a real doctor. It's just a dog. This happened again recently when we were asked to pack up our PPEs and our ventilators, and we did. So while we are not saving human lives, we are saving their best friends. During this crisis, veterinarians are creating coronavirus disease models, giving advice about the management of zoonotic disease, ensuring our food supply is safe, and caring for the pets that people love. Dogs and cats may be the only companions to people that live alone right now, and they are a welcome source of love, happiness, and stress relief for all of us. Just look at Instagram right now. Caring for animals and relieving their suffering is our purpose right now and always. Veterinary medicine does not need to be compared to human medicine or ranked in importance. You are important and essential, independent of other professions. These are extraordinary times. I've never lived through anything like this, and neither have you. The need to control the spread of this virus has forced us all to slow down, and it's terrible, but it's also a gift. It's something you may never have again. Time. Has your start date for your first job as a veterinarian been delayed? Awesome. Maybe you don't even have a job yet. Congratulations. You just completed a crazy, intense professional program, and I know you worked hard for years to get into vet school. It's okay to take a break. Get some rest and recuperate before you start your career. Veterinary medicine is a great profession, but it is also really hard. And I would love to tell you that it gets easy at some point, but that is not true. Start out rested. Now I'm going to ask you another tough question. Can you think of something that you kind of missed in veterinary school? It's okay, you don't have to tell me. There must be a concept that you missed, though. There's so much material, there's no way you could have mastered it all. You know that thing you could never memorize or understand? You know you should know it, but you don't. You just prayed it wouldn't be on the exam. Maybe you are embarrassed and you don't want to admit that you don't know something, so you just keep hoping that it's not going to come up forever. For me, it was the anatomy of the equine limb and why do we palpate cows? And maybe you're thinking, well, what does it matter if a small animal surgeon knows equine limb anatomy? And it's true, I don't need it now. But I did consider specializing in radiology at one point, and I never went after it because I was too intimidated by the equine limb. I love being a surgical oncologist, but I limited my options because of a stupid weak spot. And I'm pretty sure I could have learned about the frog and the coffin bone and the navicular bone and the coronary band, or, I mean, maybe not, but maybe. And maybe I'd be a radiologist right now, living the dream, staying home and working in my underwear before everyone else was staying home and working in their underwear. During veterinary school, I did not exactly shine in my bovine palpation lab. But in my defense, I did not get a lot of support in this area. My professor used to walk by me and my cow and just say things to us like, "How are things going here in pneumovagina land?" without stopping, giving his time and attention to the rural male vet students who I can only presume understood exactly what we were all doing here. Now I'm married to a large animal veterinarian and I am like this close to understanding why we palpate cows. Maybe we train veterinary students that something is wrong with them if they don't have all of the answers in rounds. And you've been taught to hide your knowledge gaps. Maybe we've trained veterinarians not to admit their mistakes. This is bad for our patients, and more importantly, this is really bad for you. I'm going to challenge you all to think of your weak spot and use this time to learn it now. Reach out to your classmates and your mentors and your professors and me if you want, just not about the equine limb or why we palpate cows. Not for an exam, just for yourself. As you get into practice, you're going to discover more weak spots. You will have weak spots you didn't even know you could have. We all have these. Don't bury them. Don't be embarrassed by them. Just take the time and figure it out. What is holding you back? Turn your weak spots into strengths. You don't have to know everything, but you do have to keep learning. And if you are one of my referring veterinarians and I find one of your weak spots, I will call you and say something like, "Hey, it's Sarah. Can I give you some feedback on this case?" And if that's you, please take the feedback. It's free, personalized, continuing education. Put away your ego and focus on the only thing that matters, and that's caring for our patients. This pandemic will pass eventually, really. And as a profession, we will need to pick ourselves back up and try to put everything back together again. Class of 2020 veterinarians, I hope with your help we can make it better than it was before. We are so glad you're here. We want you, your knowledge, and the different way that you and your generation see the world. I hope you will keep the lessons that we all learned during this time with you throughout your career. For me, those are: boundaries are essential to your work happiness. Being ready to pivot in your career is essential, and you are essential. Welcome to the hardest job you will ever love. Now please grab yourself a drink, turn on some Bob Marley, and dance. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter is Dr. Betsy Charles. In short, Dr. Charles is an Adidas-wearing, hip-hop dancing veterinary radiologist who wants to change the world by cultivating a community of leaders through curiosity, creative conversations, and connection. Dr. Charles holds a DVM with residency training in diagnostic imaging, as well as a master's degree in organizational leadership. She's been the executive director of the Veterinary Leadership Institute since 2011, and she believes we all have the capacity to be exceptional people of influence. All we have to do is live into our true identities and bring all we are as people to whatever it is we are asked to do in this world. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Dr. Betsy Charles.
It is an honor to be here with you, 2020 graduates, at this virtual graduation ceremony. I am so glad that I get a chance to speak to you today. And here's what I want you to do. Imagine you are back in high school. You are a member of your school's student government, and you're attending a weekend leadership retreat with all your classmates so you can learn how to make a positive difference at your school. You've kind of been flirting with one of your classmates, but not seriously. It's kind of more the overt, jokey kind of flirting. You know, the how you doing kind of thing. Now imagine you're talking to this guy and you notice that the clasp of his necklace is next to the cross pendant that is hanging from the chain. So you put one hand on the clasp, one hand on the pendant, and you move the pendant, or you move the clasp away from the pendant, and you tell him to make a wish. That's something we did back in the day. Don't know if you still do that. But here, to my surprise, he closes his eyes, puckers up, but you fully know he's not expecting that you're going to follow through because we're standing in the middle of a classroom surrounded by all our classmates. But in a strange turn of events that is absolutely outside of anything I have ever done in my entire life, I closed my eyes, leaned forward, and I planted this huge kiss right on his mouth. I turned around and walked away as if it was the most normal thing in the world to do. That, my friends, is how I got my future husband's attention when we were seniors in high school. Fast forward lots and lots of years. Those two high school sweethearts were sitting in the exam room in the office of a neurosurgeon. Drake and I are happily married and about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. Both of us are living fully into our hopes and dreams while we try to make a positive difference in the world. Him as the head of Linfield Christian School, me as the executive director of the Veterinary Leadership Institute. But Drake is being examined so we can try to figure out the cause of a limp that's been bugging him for the last few months. As I sit across from the table where Drake is seated, watching the surgeon do his exam, I realize that surgeon is trying to localize the lesion. Are Drake's signs the result of a peripheral thing like lumbar disc disease, or are they caused by something potentially way more devastating, a central lesion? I continue to watch and begin to feel sick to my stomach as I recognize his exam is pointing to the latter, a central lesion. A few months later, the letters ALS usher us into the valley of the shadow of death, a place that causes all kinds of fear, countless sleepless nights, sometimes unbearable anxiety, but mostly it just feels uncertain. What can we do to try to reverse the changes that's already occurred in his body? How fast will his signs progress? What are we going to do when he can't walk anymore? How will we manage the relentless pursuit of this enemy? It's not fair and I'm angry. I want the circumstances I find myself in to be different. I want them to be very, very different. Okay, I'm going to repeat some of the words I just spoke, and I want you to listen carefully. Fear, sleepless nights, unbearable anxiety, uncertainty, not fair, angry, circumstances to be different. As you sit out there in virtual graduation world, take a moment, close your eyes, breathe, relax your shoulders, shake it out a bit. I just took you on a deep dive down into my story, a story that on the surface seems intense and painful. But in the telling of my story, I wonder if many of you hear your story, the story of what it means to be finishing veterinary school in the midst of a global pandemic, a worldwide tragedy that has changed life as we know it and seemingly robbed you of the happy ending that you have been working toward your entire life. I'm not weaving our stories together, though, just for those reasons. Make no mistake, the last 3.5 years have been the most difficult years of my life, by far. And now listen closely. They have also been the most beautiful years of my entire life. Walking through the valley of the shadow of death with my beloved Drake, then ushering him into the arms of his creator, and now learning how to live without his physical presence beside me have transformed the lens through which I look at life. I suspect your lens has also been changed. The best description of what my new lens looks like comes from C.S. Lewis in his story, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He wrote, "People who have not been in Narnia sometimes think a thing cannot be good and terrible at the same time. I now know deep in the core of my spirit this clash between the good and the terrible. I've been to Narnia. And guess what, you, my friends, 2020 graduates, you've been to Narnia too. You actually are in Narnia right now, learning how to navigate the tension between the good and the terrible. I must take a moment here and address the elephant I fear may have snuck into our midst: comparative suffering. It sounds something like this. You, Dr. Charles, have been to Narnia, but I don't think we have. I mean, your loss is so much greater than ours. We dare not compare our situation to yours because ours is not nearly as intense. And here's how I respond to that idea. I'll use the words of my beloved Drake, a person who was well acquainted with what it means to suffer. He said this: suffering is suffering, whether it's loss of a job, loss of a loved one, pain associated with a chronic illness, not getting to spend the last semester of your time in veterinary school with your classmates. Whatever. Suffering is suffering, and the best response to a person's pain, no matter what the cause, is the gift of your presence. You see, I think our stories are very similar. When I share mine, it gives you the freedom to think about yours. We share a common theme of loss. Loss of what was, loss of what we hoped for, loss of everything we thought we knew to be true and good. But it's not just the terrible that we share. We also share a common theme of beauty and grace. My friends, silver linings are everywhere. We must just be willing to see them. So in the few moments I have left, let's go to Narnia and find a couple silver linings, shall we? Let's explore 2 secrets Narnia has to offer about what will help us successfully navigate this tension between the good and the terrible, so that good wins. Remember what I said earlier? The last 3.5 years have been the most beautiful of my life. Even now, I'm mostly filled with joy and peace and hope, despite agonizing loss. I know it is possible to navigate the tension between the good and the terrible with grace and hope. How do we do that? First, we got to feel the feels. Last Monday, I was walking with my dog, Sadie. We have a very specific route we take each morning, and as we approached a turn in the neighborhood, I noticed this beautiful yellow, black, and red flower growing up through the bark. It caught my attention because it was the only flower I'd seen during our walk. I stopped and took a picture of it. It was that pretty. The next morning, as Sadie and I walked our normal route, I was super excited to see the flower. And as I approached the turn, it was nowhere to be seen. My first thought was, man, did somebody pick my flower? That would be super lame. But I bent down and looked more closely. No one had picked the flower. It was still there, but it was closed in a tight bud, its petals all pushed together, so you could barely see it against the brown of the bark. And just like that, my heart was racing. You see, I've spent the last 15 months trying to learn how to live in this new normal, one that doesn't include Drake. It's like putting on a new outfit that doesn't quite fit. I pull and tug and shift to try to make it feel better, but it doesn't. Every cell in my body is rearranging into a new Betsy, one that can honor Drake and all that he means to me, while also embracing a life that no longer includes him in it. For the last several months, my whole being has been resisting that, rebelling against the reorganization that must take place. And in a moment, I saw my resistance and fear in that tightly closed up flower. It was terrible. But just as quickly as the anxiety started, it was gone, replaced by joy and a huge grin because of one thought. I want to be yesterday's flower, bold and amazing, so bright and passionate that I shine, so that nobody can miss me. In that moment, I was feeling the feels, both bad and then good. I want you, in the midst of what you're facing right now, I want you to allow yourself that same freedom as you walk through all that is happening in your life, this weird end to your veterinary education. Name what you are feeling. Describe what's happening in your physiology. Learn to recognize what might trigger your emotions, both the positive emotions and the negative. And don't be afraid to look for the bold and the beautiful. Finally, I think what Narnia tells us is we need to be present. The most important lesson my walk through the valley of the shadow of death taught me is that I am promised today. And today, it's a gift that is meant to be enjoyed completely. But we are so easily derailed from that truth, aren't we? When things get tough, we so quickly turn to longing for the past or spinning about the future. We want things to go back to the way they were, or we spend time worrying about what is to come, especially when what is to come is uncertain and uncomfortable. Unfortunately, when we are so focused on the past or we're worried about the future, we miss the power of love and grace and hope in the present. Let me say that one more time. When we focus only on the past or we worry just about the future, we miss the power of love and grace and hope in the present, this life, the here and now. We must not forget the past or write off the future. Instead, let them inform how we live in the present, because how we live definitely matters. How you 2020 graduates live matters beyond. It matters so much for our profession, and I can't wait to see how this shapes the future of our profession. In closing, I want to leave you with truth that I know each of you need to hear. Truth spoken from one visitor of Narnia to all of you who have also been there. I want you to just close your eyes. If you're a graduate, if you're a 2020 graduate, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to listen carefully to the words I'm about to say. I need for you to deeply, truly, and freely absorb this message. I am proud of you. What do I mean by the word proud? It's a combination of admiration and gratitude and love and joy. I don't know yet where your skills and talents will take us. And my admiration and gratitude and love and joy in you will not be amplified or diminished by where we go. I am proud of your effort and attitude and courage. You have tried hard. You have maintained joy in the face of unbelievable adversity. You have been brave in your pursuit of this dream. You will shine like the brightest star that you are, no matter what happens or what job you do. I am so, so proud of you. You are enough. You are creative. You are powerful beyond your wildest dreams. You can make a positive difference no matter what your job title. You were created to bring a unique perspective to veterinary medicine. You, graduates of 2020, are exactly what our profession needs. Graduation day is a day of triumph. Step once and forever into the freedom your education has prepared for you. Free to shine, free to learn, free to lead, free to love, free to be your whole and true self. Step into the waves of life with laughter and delight. Surrender with joy and peace into your purpose. Then, my friends, stand firm and walk strong. Congratulations, all the graduates of 2020. I am so excited about what you're going to do in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back 2020 veterinary school graduate, Trustin Moore.
I wanna be a veterinarian so freaking bad, to treat all of the pets I'd never had. I wanna be on the cover of People magazine, standing next to Evan and Andy. Don't worry, Dr. Andy, we'll get there. I'll run a CBC chemistry with lights. I won't listen when they say their dog doesn't bite. A different patient every night. Oh, I swear. Oh, I better prepare for when your pet needs some care.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to go ahead and close out this evening with a couple of words for the graduates myself, if that's okay. Graduates of the class of 2020, welcome to the greatest profession in the world. I know that there's a lot of anxiety about the future, and I know that as we have this virtual graduation, it's apparent that the world is a bit different now than it has been in the past, and this is probably not at all what you expected. I know that there's stress about the way that clinics wrapped up and going into a new job that's not functioning the way that the hospitals have functioned in the past. I know that that causes anxiety, and it's easy to think that this is a bad thing or that you're going into a bad time or a troubling time in our profession. And I just want to share with you a quick story that I've reflected on a lot in the last couple of weeks and months. And it's a 2,000-year-old story. It's called The Chinese Farmer. And in this story, there's a farmer. And he owns a farm and he works with his son and he has a horse. And one day the horse runs away. And his neighbor comes over and goes, "This is terrible luck. This is the worst thing that could happen. This is devastating." And the farmer says, "Well, maybe it is. Maybe it's not." And a couple days later, the horse comes back and it brings with it another horse. And the farmer goes, "This is wonderful." And then a few days later, his son is riding the horse that came back. And he falls off. He takes a bad fall and he terribly breaks his leg. And the neighbor goes, "This is terrible. What a horrible thing to happen. You are truly cursed. This is the worst possible thing." And the farmer says, "Well, maybe it is, and maybe it's not." And a few days after that, the emperor comes through to collect men to go to war to fight off invaders. And many of the men who go were killed. But the son was spared because of his injured leg. And that's a short story, but the point is pretty obvious, is we don't know what's good. And we often don't know what's bad. But let me tell you this, guys, I see opportunity in our profession. I think you're coming into something wonderful. Everywhere I go, I see puppies. My neighborhood is swamped with kittens and puppies, people who think this is the perfect time to bond and house train and potty train little itty bitty kittens and puppies. And the shelters are empty. Guys, people are more in love with their pets today than they've ever been before. Gang, we have jumped ahead 5 years in telemedicine and technology and digital communication in the last 6 weeks. This has been a great motivator for us to jump into the modern world and rethink what we do and how we do it and how we serve pets. And you are the first class who is not going to have to figure that out and retrofit what you've been doing. You were born into the new era. You're going to take to this like a fish to water. This will be the practice that you know. The areas for you to come into our practice and innovate, the entrepreneurial opportunities for you to start new businesses, to take practices in new ways and new directions, to come in and add functionality to practices that exist, they're enormous. Guys, veterinary medicine is not going anywhere. I think the future is brighter than it's ever been, and you are going to be the first native class in that future. I am thrilled for you. I want to give you a couple of pieces of advice just getting started. 3 pieces to be exact. As I said, I know it's easy to worry about the future. My first piece of advice is live in the present. It is so easy as purpose-driven people who have always pushed to get grades, to pass the final exams, to advance to the next year of vet school, and now to advance to graduation. It is so easy to feel like the next part of your life is the next big hurdle. It's getting that residency. It's graduating from that residency. It's getting married. It's having a family. It's buying a veterinary practice. It's getting out of debt. Those things are important and you should work towards them. But listen, please listen. Your life is happening today. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Life is what happens in the meantime. You've graduated from veterinary school. Enjoy every day, right? The purpose and meaning that we find in life, it doesn't come with big accomplishments. It's in the little things. It's in the smile of the pet owner. It's in the thank you card that you will get from the client that you helped. It is in the eyes of the patient whose life that you saved. Those are the things that mattered. It's time with the people that you love, with your family, with your friends. It's times doing things that you like, your hobbies, the things outside of work. You are a veterinarian, but that's not all that you are. Be someone who enjoys your days and not who always looks ahead and thinks, I'll be happy when blank. So live in the moment. Number 2, be the one who tells yourself that you are successful. Don't wait for someone else to tell you that you're successful. I see so many of our colleagues that are afraid to validate themselves. And instead, they look to other people and they look to their clients and they say, I will know that I am a good doctor, or I will know that I am successful when the people that I deal with my clients, when they tell me that I'm successful. Let me tell you a little story about people. I have a patient. Her name is Fancy. Fancy is a 20-year-old Chihuahua. Fancy has terrible dental disease. She has bilateral cataract. She has a kicking heart murmur. She has a mass in her liver, and she has bladder cancer. Fancy is one of those little Chihuahuas that is simply too mean to die. That's Fancy. And so I had Fancy come into the clinic not long ago, and the owners come in and they have Fancy, and she's wrapped in a towel, and they bring her into the exam room, and they lay the towel down, and they lay her out, and they say, doctor, she had a seizure, and now she won't eat, and she's just not acting right. And I say, okay, and we talk about Fancy, and they decide that they want to do some diagnostics and try to figure out what's wrong with Fancy and see if we can help her. And so I take Fancy and I wrap her up and I go and we do some diagnostics and I do blood work and I do x-rays and I come back to the room and I say, well, guys, aside from having terrible dental disease and bilateral cataracts and a kicking heart murmur and a mass in her liver and bladder cancer, I can't find anything wrong with her. And the owners say, well, Doc, we have got to treat her. And I say, well, she's 20 years old and we can definitely treat her, but if she doesn't recover, I don't want her to suffer. And they said, we agree. And so what was decided is that I would treat her for the day and we would do supportive care and IV fluids and things like that. And then we would see how it goes. And so they came back at the end of the day and Fancy was largely unchanged. And they said, well, we're going to take her home. We're not going to leave her in the hospital. And I said, okay, well, you can take her home. But one way or another, I will see you back in the morning. I will either see you in the morning because she hasn't improved, at which time we will make sure that she doesn't suffer and we will humanely euthanize her. Or she will get better and I will see you back and I'll take this catheter out and we will get her on some medications to continue on at home. And they said, yes, either way, we will see you tomorrow morning. And so they took Fancy and they left. And the next morning they came back in and the technician came out of the room and she set it up and I said, how does she look? And the technician said, she looks like Fancy. And so I went into the room and sure enough, the owners have got Fancy and she's wrapped up in the towel and they lay the towel down and they lay the towel out and Fancy stands there for a moment before kind of slinking down to her side and then her tail kind of thumps about 3 times on the table. And I looked at the dog and I looked at them and they looked at the dog and they looked at me. And then the lady goes, ta-da! You fixed her! She hasn't looked this good in years! and I just stared at them. And so this is what I want to tell you about people. People are crazy. Never forget that people are crazy. They'd be crazy the best ways ever, but they're crazy. Don't rely on people, other people, to validate you or to tell you that you're a good doctor. You don't have any control over that. There are simply people in this world that you will never make happy because they choose not to be happy. And you shouldn't hang your happiness or your sense of validation on those people. Learn to validate yourself as a doctor, as a human being. And so how do you do that? Don't ask yourself at the end of appointments, did I make that person happy? Were they happy? Ask instead, did I do the best job that I can do? Did I listen to those people? Really listen? Did I show them compassion and kindness? Am I a better doctor today than I was yesterday? Am I a better doctor this year than I was last year? Do I treat my staff with respect? Have I earned their respect? Am I working to earn their respect? Do I care about them? Those are the questions that define you as a good doctor. And only you can answer them. And so ask yourself those questions. And if the answers are yes, then you are a good doctor. That's it. And if the answers are, I don't know, then you know what you need to do. And guys, veterinary medicine is a lifelong challenge. It will never go away. You'll always wrestle with those questions, but they are questions that you control. Don't let other people validate you. You decide, are you a good doctor? Ask yourself those questions and be honest. So don't look for external validation. It just leaves you wanting. And the last thing I want to say is, guys, remember the good that you can do in the world as a veterinarian. It truly is the greatest gift this profession gives. You have the ability to really make a difference. It was a Thursday at the vet clinic, and the front door flies open, and this woman bursts in, and she's got this towel, and she said, "Help me! Somebody help me! Please help me with my dog!" And so my team runs out to the front, and I go up and I talk to her, and she said, "You have got to help me with my puppy. All the other puppies in the litter have died, and I cannot let this dog die. His name is Django. He's the last of the litter." And so I take this 3-pound, 5-week-old pit bull puppy named Django, and Django's gums are as white as a sheet, and he can't open his eyes, and he's been vomiting worms, and Django is just about die. And I say to the lady, "Okay, well, we're going to get a plan together, and we're going to take care of Django." And she says, "Listen, I don't have any money. I've never been to the vet before. I just can't let this dog die." And so I said to her this ridiculous thing that veterinarians often say that you should never say, but I did. I said to her, "Why don't you give me the dog and I'll see what I can do?" And so she hands me this pile of towels, and she turns around and walks out the door and never saw her again. So now I've got this dog, and I take him to the back, and I say, "Let's see if we can fix this puppy." And my senior technician, who's kind of salty, comes over and goes, "You know this dog's going to die, right?" And I said, "Well, does that mean that you don't think we should try to save him?" And she goes, "No, we should try to save him, but I want you to know that I know he's going to die." So with that, we start trying to put catheters into this dehydrated little puppy and everything. And I'm looking at this dog, and this dog is a parasite dog. This dog has got hookworms, I'm sure of it. That's why his gums are white as a sheet. He's got internal bleeding. You know, if I can get this dog a blood transfusion, I think we might get this dog back to life. And so I look around, and I have one dog in the practice. His name is Facer. And Facer is an Argentine dogo, which, if you're not familiar, that is a breed of dog that has been bred to hunt and kill wild boar. That's what this dog is for. Facer is 140 pounds of muscle and fury and anger. Facer is that dog that the owner brings him in and no one touches him. Like, the owner takes him back to the kennels, and then we move him around through a system of chutes like an alligator at the zoo. That's Facer. But he's the only dog that I've got. And so I call the owner up and I say, "Hey, I have a puppy that needs a blood transfusion. And Facer is here, and I think that Facer's blood would be perfect and wonderful. Could I get blood from Facer to give to this puppy?" And the owner says, "If you can get it, you can have it." And that's what he said. And so the next thing you know, my boss and I are in the run with Facer. And you're not putting a muzzle on Facer. Muzzles offend Facer. And so I've got a bowl of cat food in my hands, and my boss has got a 30cc syringe, and he's creeping up from behind like some Keystone Cop. And I am going, "Come here, Facer, look at the cat, not at my face, look at the cat food." And all of a sudden, Facer just dives into the cat food. Nom, 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 nom. And sure enough, the boss pinches off the lateral saphenous vein and pokes him. And we suck out about 20 cc's of blood, and Facer doesn't even notice. And we go back in, stick the syringe into that catheter, push the plunger, and this little dog just comes back from the dead and wakes up. And it is about 30 seconds. It's the most amazing transformation that you've ever seen. Wow. And now I've got this puppy that's getting dewormed and is bouncing back to life. And so at that point, we get to the end of the day, and this dog needs to be fed through the night. And the technicians hand him to me, and I broke one of the cardinal rules of my marriage. That's right. My wife and I have an agreement. We've been married almost 20 years, and the agreement is you do not bring pets home. That has been our agreement. And married couples out there, I encourage you to consider this agreement. I'd never broken the agreement until that day. And so I take the dog home, and I open the door, and my young children, who were about 4 and 7, immediately go shoo, and they lock right onto the dog, and they go, "It's a puppy! Dad, want a puppy!" And they run up to me, and my wife leans out of the kitchen and sees the dog and goes, and the kids go, oh, it's a puppy, let's name it. And my wife says, his name is Hospital Dog, and he lives at the hospital. That's his name, Hospital Dog. And sure enough, we both stuck to it. I kept the dog that night, and I took the dog back to the hospital the next day. And that dog became the dog that has a den. He has a little cage, but he's never there. He's always in somebody's pocket. You see your nurses have got him like this, and they're doing stuff. And then the front desk, they've got him in their lap, and they're typing. They're talking to clients. He just got passed around, but he was always called Rourke's dog. And so I'm starting to freak out here because I do have an agreement with my wife, and she's not backing down. And so I have got to find this dog a home. And so I'm posting on the internet. I'm sharing this story. And about 3 weeks go by, and I'm starting to go, oh, we're going to have a reckoning here at home. This could be dicey. And I get an email. And I get an email from a woman named Kim, and she said, I've been watching the story of Django, and that dog is a survivor. And I am also a survivor. I believe I'm meant to have that dog. And I said, wonderful. Where are you located? And she said, Connecticut. And I'm in South Carolina. And so I said to her something that someone had said to me recently. I said, if you can get him, you can have him. And darn if she didn't buy a flight, fly down, get a cab to the clinic, get the dog. We got a picture together. We talked. She took that dog, went right back to the airport, and flew straight home. She loved that dog. I got pictures and photos and updates, and I still get them. Guys, I got them. I got so many updates. I got pictures of him being crate trained, him getting his new dog food, him getting his vaccines at the vet. I got pictures of him going to dog training and getting his obedience certificate. When he got neutered, she sent me a big picture of his junk before and after, which I did not ask for, but she sent it to me. Guys, she loves this dog. This is her best friend. This is her family. And she writes to me about how he's doing and how much she loves him. And guys, this dog is the dog that she needed. And I think that dog needed her. And I think about that and her glowing face and the wonderful messages and notes that I get from this person. Guys, we have the ability to change lives, to give people family members, to save their family members. Who else gets to create and be a part of joy like that? Nobody. When I talk about living in the moment, I talk about recognizing the good that we do day to day. And it's so easy for us, and it comes so naturally. We do so much of it, it's easy to forget how much of a difference you're making. But guys, that's what it's all about. It's about helping other people. It's about making the world a better place. It's about reducing suffering in the world as a whole and the people around us. And guys, you now have the ability to do that in a way that almost no one else does. That's wonderful. Don't overlook it. Don't forget your importance and how much good you can do. This is the best career ever. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Graduates of the class of 2020, congratulations. Let me raise a toast to you and say, welcome, welcome aboard. You are right where you're supposed to be, and you are going to do great. Thank you. Good night.
you.